Hello, my name is Nathaniel Watkins, and this is Impact 2020. Impact 2020, for those of you who don't know and may be joining us for the first time, is our attempt to be able to talk about social unjust, the recent events that are happening today in our communities, how that is affecting our lives as people in general, young people, old people, Black people, everyone. And so today we have a guest. We have Bo, who has joined us before and who has coming on again. And we're just going to talk to some of the recent events. Bo, how you doing? Thank you for joining us.
Hey, what's going on, guys? How's everyone doing?
Doing pretty good.
Yeah.
So as we know the events that's going on, we'll jump right into the big topic of the day and of the week. Matter of fact, of the year, and if you're Black, of our lifetime.
Yeah.
Again, another Black man has been unarmed Black man. So far, of what we know, has been shot in Kenesha. They've been able to say it, Kenesha or Kenesho. I don't know how to say it. Wisconsin.
Right. Yeah.
And this gentleman, 29-year-old Jacob Blake, was shot in the back 7 times. At least 7 times, in front of his 3 sons, shot by the officers as he was walking towards his car. Now, we don't have the examination. We have a video. Like, the only things that we talk about is what we have on video. And the police, different police representatives have wanted us to reserve judgment, move with caution, because some people say, hey, he might have had a knife. Some people say, hey, he was going for a weapon. Some people were saying, hey, he was just trying to get in his car and get away. What we do know is that there was a disagreement between 2 young ladies. He came to the house or the residence. He was attempting to break up the disagreement or the argument. And after that, that's when the police arrived. But the facts are the facts. He was shot 7 times in the back. With all of that being said, personally, how do you feel about we're back at this again? We just had George Floyd. We've had a lot of rioting. We've had a lot of discussions. We've had a lot of protesting. We've had a lot of movement when it comes to the monuments, when it comes to other things, and now we're right back at it again. How do you feel about that? Is that frustrating? Do you feel like I'll let you go ahead. How do you feel about this whole situation?
Yeah, it's definitely unfortunate news, and personally, I'm affected by it. I'm in a weird space because I saw it. What's today? Tuesday? Yeah, I saw it yesterday morning, and it's kind of a weird way to kind of start your day. I didn't hear about it, through a conversation, so I wasn't expecting it. So for me, it was alarming. Also, in the day and age that we're in, sadly to say it this way, this is kind of what happens. And I hate that this is becoming the narrative. But I would say I try to keep things in a positive light. I'm glad that he didn't lose his life. As more details have been, I don't know him. I don't know the police that were associated. I'm not, can't pronounce the name of the town in Wisconsin, but I don't know anybody from that town. But from the video, and when I understood there were children in the car, little kids at that, like under the age of 5, under the age of 10, and as a parent and an uncle, that bothered me the most, because like 7 shots. I guess I don't know all the details, but I just don't think. I think that police can detain people in other ways outside of him being assaulted that way, if that makes sense. So yeah, it was just an array of confused and frustrating feelings that as a man, and like you said, being Black, it kind of, these things do happen. And
right now, the immediate reaction from some people will be, "Hey, let's look at his character. Was he a bad dude? Has he done this or that?"
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yes.
So
is that important?
So after I came out of after I got out of my personal emotional state, on the internet, it got me. So I did a little research about him. Some things came up on his record of the past, like he had a criminal history from what I was reading. Man, my opinion of it is still frustrating because, and I'm glad we're in a situation where we're in the house of God. Like, no one on earth is God. And these guys are basically losing their life for doing something wrong. And there is a system set up in our country that if you do something wrong, you should be brought to a court of law. And there should be evidence that you did this wrong. And then your punishment should be applied. But it sucks, that our generation of us and, past and present, that people are, seeing folks, basically assassinated on the internet by police. And that does cause questions for reform from people. I'm not saying I'm for or against it, but, you have to have a conversation if situations like this are happening across the country. The George Floyd situation is miles away from where this guy is at, and it's unrelated. And like you said, as we're hearing that there was some questions about his character. I'm not here to judge anyone, but also if the police were called and there was a situation where it didn't look like he was resisting arrest, like I said, from what the video saw, it didn't seem like 7 gunshots with 3 kids in the car were warranted, whether he, was someone that was a suspect or not. I just feel that you could have had better caution for everyone in the area. If he was doing something wrong, yeah, I understand that someone needs to be reprimanded. But, like I said, there's kids out there, there's women, other adults that aren't part of the situation. What about their safety, Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I'm constantly reminded of, and it's a terrible story of when we talk about Dylann Roof. And for people who may not remember, this is the young gentleman, young white boy who went to a church, sat in the church, and then murdered 9 people in the church. And when they arrested him, he was hungry, and they took him by McDonald's before they took him to jail. And so you sit back and you say, all right, this guy murdered 9 people, and he gets treated to McDonald's on his way to jail. You have Mr. Blake, who broke up a fight, and he gets treated to 7 bullets in his back. What kind of message, are we sending Black people when you sit back and you see that double standard? And more so, what do you say to the people who are just like, oh, well, he should have followed directions, when you see a white person treated like, I don't know, you're treated like royalty on your way to jail while we get sent to jail, if we're lucky enough to get sent to jail or out on the stretcher?
Yeah, I totally understand that, like I said, I've been in our previous conversation, we talked about my previous encounters with law enforcement, and I was raised to, be respectful and, try to follow directions, whether you're, in the right or wrong situation when dealing with police, because there's nothing that you can do until they're gone. So I understand what people are saying, but like, I've been pulled over and been, in a situation with police 15 to 20 times in my life. Clean record, thank God. Nothing crazy, nothing like that. But I would say, with that being said, since I am, totally clean, with someone who would be possibly being of that, there's so many examples of them not being killed and taken to court and being arrested in the due process that we are technically should be guaranteed in this country from how it's being told. They kind of tell us, it's what innocent until proven guilty, and I understand people want, in his situation, like some of the narrative of comments is that, hey, he should have followed these rules. Well, there are no real rules if you're not doing anything wrong, then police come by and kind of bother you. Like if you and I are talking right now, what's the rule of a cop coming in here or my house or where you're at and harass? There's no rules for that. Besides, like, what am I? What's going on? So I could see someone misunderstanding that too. I don't want folks to be too critical on stuff on the outside if they don't really understand all the like, hey, he had a criminal record, all the points of the situation. Guy's still a father, and he was shot 7 times in front of his kid, while he allegedly was trying to break up a fight.
All right, so let's move to the social justice reaction. So previously when you were on here, we talked about the violence that was going on with the protests and whatnot, and and there's an acknowledgement that some of the movement that has gone on right now, as far as the progression in the movement, has come as a result of the violence. Mr. Blake's father said, hey, protest, but let's not do it to violently. Let's not have any destruction. Has your opinion changed? Now, I'll tell you that my movement on this has been, it's like you do your kids. If your child does not do what you ask them to do, you repeat yourself. If they don't do what you ask them to do, you may have to put them on timeout. But at some point, if they don't do what you say, you may have to, as it says, spare the rod, spoil the child. You may have to put some force behind your words. And it seems like Breonna Taylor dies, George Floyd dies. We need to not spare the rod, because the child or the irresponsible people who think that our lives don't matter need to have some force behind our words. Do you feel that the protesting that goes on, we need to do nonviolent, or, hey man, if you're gonna keep killing our people, we're gonna keep messing some stuff up? Where do you come on that whole argument?
I mean, I'm for peace, man. I try to be a peaceful guy. Like I said, I'm an uncle. I got nieces and nephews. I got daughters, and I want them to exercise their voice and voice what's right and wrong. I'm also a member of society, and I understand that there are people who, if you do something to one of their family members, they're not going to react in a calm way if there's something done wrong. And I think that a lot of people need to understand that, hey, if this is one of your family members, your emotion totally changes. And I understand why people are kind of, I don't like too much of the looting and all that. That's a little extreme, like burning down places. But protesting definitely needs to be happening, and not even just for Mr. Blake. Even going all the way back to Emmett Till, man. There's been hundreds of examples where, before the internet was around, that people were getting away with this, and we know it's because we're black.
Let me ask you: a racist person sits back and says, "Hey, man, let's keep killing these dudes." I mean, worst thing they're gonna do, they're gonna have a couple parades out in the street. I mean, I might have some bad traffic. Versus you coming back and saying, "Hey, man, we better stop killing people because they gonna tear up all these businesses downtown." Is that a valid way to look at it? Like, if that's the response that we're getting from them, we got to put some, as people say, sometimes you got to put some fear in their heart. Right. What fear are we putting in their heart other than the fact that we might tear some stuff up? Because we're not going to go try to shoot the cops. Like, I mean, that's not happening. That's ridiculous. Yeah. No one should ever do that. But what do you have that you can take away from other people to force them to do? Because clearly it's Black Lives Matter to us, but clearly there's a group of people who it doesn't matter to. And the slogan, the saying is not going to do anything to change that. What do we do to make, at the end of the day, we can protest all day. Are we going to be able to effectively make change, or do we have to put fear in their heart in whatever manner that means to get them to stop?
And I think that part of fear, I think part of change and fear kind of go hand in hand. I think if we want some type of change, there needs to be fear of whatever. I can't speak for the opposite side because I'm not on it, but I agree with what you're saying. I think I went out of town like a month ago, up north with the Massachusetts. Social distancing was wasn't around a lot of people, but I ran into a guy at the store and he found out we were from Virginia and he had been here before. So his reaction for everything that's happened here in Richmond, and we've been local for so long that I kind of don't know what the country's reaction of us is. Where I'm going with this is, you've seen what's happening with the statues, and some of them are gone. I believe that the protests that we've seen have been a little bit different the last 6 months than previous generations. I think there's some elements that have been the same, but I do believe that, with the younger generation, I'm 35. So as I was out there, I was seeing people between the ages of 18 and 25 who are, younger than me. they are, that they were different than their ancestors and how, and everyone else that came before them, how they protested. And like I said, with all the graffiti and stuff like that, these folks in Massachusetts were like, man, wow, like what's going on down there? And I'm like, hey, kind of like an everyday thing if you live here. But it dawned on me at that time, like, wow, you guys live in Massachusetts. You saw, folks vandalizing the Robert E. Lee statue, and it's motivating you guys to promote Black Lives Matter in your neighborhood, and and be okay with it. So that kind of gave me a personal example of like, wow, these monuments been here for 100 years, and for the first time, they've always like spray painted them and tagged them, but it's never been this severe. Like it really looks like a kid just wrote all over it. It's total different monument now. So that made me kind of realize that something as small as graffiti putting on something, and people rallying around it and then causing it for to be removed is some part of the chain. Now, granted, some people say, well, it's a statue. People still getting killed and assaulted, but people have been protesting for those statues for decades, and they're finally gone. So that's a change, and I know that, even with my family, they've raised me, you try to do good for the world, even though you might not live here to see it the way you want it to be, like if I wanted to be a better world, I might not be here when it's going to be the way I would like it to be, but I want to contribute as every day that I'm here, and I like that people call out on other people's wrongs. And so I feel you with protesting it's somewhat peaceful, but we do need to establish some type of fear. I don't have all the answers on, whatever else that could be. But with the rioting and the looting, sometimes like what I saw here, they hit Black businesses as well. And that part kind of bothered me because it kind of contradicted what the message that we're sending. And I'm not saying to target non-Black business, target any business at all, but that can't say Black Lives Matter and then you throwing rocks and busting down the Black dentists who are fixing Black people's teeth.
Interesting. Good point. Well, right now, the RNC, Republican National Convention, is going on as of right now that we're filming this. There's a young lady named Abby Johnson, and she is an anti-abortion advocate, and she's about to speak at the RNC tonight. She has adopted numerous kids, and she has one who is biracial. She's a white lady. Let me put that out there. She has one that is biracial. Here's her statement. Statistically, my brown son is more likely to commit a violent offense over my white sons. And as a result, she was defending the fact that she believes that police should be able to profile Black people. So let me say this one more time. Statistically, my brown son is more likely to commit a violent offense over my white sons. This is her biracial son that she adopted. Talk to that. How do you feel about that? And she's speaking at the RNC tonight.
I hope they can call the adoption agency on that lady. Like that's a rather rude and wrong comment at the same time. That's crazy that she's speaking for the president tonight, and she says something like that where she's the positive of it is she adopted someone else's kids. That's a good thing. I like that. But then to have those comments, that doesn't sit well with me because that's just categorizing people as a whole. Mm-hmm. You got basically, like she said, a darker complexion kid and a white kid, and he deserves to be targeted more just because of it. That just bringing us back 300-400 years. And I
think that speaks to the actual problem. This is this child's mother. This is the mother who has adopted this child. You knew that they were of mixed race when you adopted them. But yet, if that is the idea and if that is the thought process of white people towards their own kids, if that is the idea and the thought process of the Republican National Convention, and I'm going to put that on them because they brought her there, that is what the president of the United States as of right now represents, and they are not pushing her out. There's no big uproar. Everybody knew that she said this, so that is what the Republicans stand for. If that is what half of the country stands for at this moment, what do we do? How monument a task is this clearly they're okay. If you're okay with profiling your own son, clearly you're okay with the treatment of Black people, the current treatment, and that's half of the country. Is it? What can you do to change that kind of mindset if it's in your own house?
In this situation, I think the only other alternative is, to put people in positions of opposition to run for office. Clearly right now, the big one is, if you go Democrats versus Republicans, Joe Biden and Ms. Harris versus these guys. But I think that is voting is a big part, because that is the number one reason why we're in this situation now, is that this guy was voted into office, electoral wise, and I think what popular vote wise. And now 4 years later, as he's running for president, this lady is representing him, who made this rude comment about, her son that she adopted, like you said, who's a mixed race. And it's unfortunate to hear stuff like that, man. Like I said, she adopted him, brought him into her house, and to make a comment like that, and she's in such a position where she's speaking at the Republican National Convention on national TV. And I work in television as my day job, and I really love TV. But I will say this: one of the things I don't like about it is very, very similar to a drug. And what I mean by that is, unfortunately, I've had family members that were victims of substance abuse, so love them to death. But I've seen a lot of them recover. And the bad part about it is that television does is, someone is going to watch that and they're going to read her comments and they're going to kind of maybe agree with what she thinks, and not tell anyone. And then they're going to see her and it's going to validate their opinion. And I don't like that. I don't know who that person is, but I know that television does that, because, as I said, I do it for a living. People buy products. People, it's great things on TV. It's not just bad things. But the one thing about TV is that, when it depends on who's getting their 15 seconds of fame, there's a lot of people watching. There's always somebody watching. And most of the time, with these political events, it's half and half. It's half higher education, half lower education. And I have a lot of lower education in my family. There's nothing wrong with people like that. But I will say, if you're talking race, it's a very important issue, because if someone's not going to educate themselves on another race in this country, they're going to be at a very big disadvantage socially, which is why she's talking like that, if you get what I'm saying. Being Black, you got to learn about everybody. You got to learn about the Indians. You got to learn about white people. And then you already know your own story because you're Black. But, in the history books for kids, there's no narrative about us. It's unfortunate she made that comment, because that's something that shouldn't be said by someone who's adopting a Black kid.
Yeah. So the House just passed the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. Now, this act has a lot of components to it. It's in response to everything that's been going on. One of the things is it makes chokeholds a felony for police officers to do. It reduces the immunity that they have when they commit crimes. And so this bill, as it's been passed in the House, it has not been taken up by the Senate. Legislation and bills like these, I'll say, appear to be a move in the right direction. Appear to be taking us where we want to go, especially taking away, the main thing for me is taking away some of the immunity of the police, so that if they commit a crime, just like we commit a crime, they can feel the same effects. And I think that may have some differences there. So we have the effort that is being made. However, if the Senate doesn't do anything, then that's dead on the route. What can we do for the people who agree with this bill? For the people who have been working so hard, we finally seeing some movement. What can we do, you think, to support that effort? We know that voting is the answer in a lot of these situations, but we're finally seeing these things moving, but we can't move them because, as we just talked about, half of the country is not with it. So that so now that we finally have some bills being moved, we see that some people in the government are supporting our actions. What can we do to further kind of move the ball along with things like this House bill or some other things legislative wise?
I'm glad you emphasized the governmental process in this, because, as you said, the next step is it going to the hands of the Senate. I think this is where everyone, this is where you contact your senators. As you've seen with Breonna Taylor, they went to the governor's house or the mayor of Louisville. I don't, forgive me for not having that correct, but here's where you continue to tweet at your senators and voice how important this bill is for people to get that passed. I agree with you. This is a step in the right direction. I'll also say I'm not here to totally bash and be against the police. I understand that people commit crimes, and there needs to be some type of due process for them to get the criminal and arrest them, and so they can take them to court and then have their trial. And unfortunately, I think that there's not a lot of training, as I've read, for these guys. And it put us in a situation where you have a George Floyd and other numerous situations where folks are being choked out, and even Eric Garner. So I'm happy that they're doing something about these laws and at least getting them on the board and talked about. Sadly, that it's taking people's lives to do so. That's what I don't like about it, where this is like common sense kind of thing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We got a good comment. The good news is that Moses grew up in Pharaoh's house, but ended up freeing his people. That is a good comment that goes back to not just young gentleman who is living with Abby Johnson, who made that ridiculously racist comment, but it goes to any other child who may be raised with some people who may have some antiquated ideas. You got to remember that one of the people who started some of this new day, Colin Kaepernick, was adopted by white people, and he grew up in a white house. And so, not saying anything disparaging against his family or anything, but you don't know how he grew up.
Right.
And a white person, as good as they may try, cannot teach a black person how to be black. And so it's a good sign to sit back and say, we have examples in the Bible of Moses growing up under Pharaoh, but yet fighting for his people. So not all is lost for this young gentleman. Hopefully, he realizes that his mother has some very sick ideas. But we're gonna keep moving on because we don't have that much time left. All right, back here again. Another person has died. Well, he hasn't died. I'm sorry. He shot temporary. Hopefully, it's temporary paralysis that he has. But we're back here again. Churches. What should we be doing? What do you want to see from the local black churches now that we're at this point? Statues have gone down. Protests have gone on. People are starting to protest less and they're scattering. All right, black church, you up. What should we be doing?
I think situations like this is good. Having the conversation, not shying away from it, incorporating it into our daily lessons and weekly plans of doing God's work and working on your purpose. I believe it's a hard spot to be in, but also as the old saying, pressure makes diamonds, and it might be a golden opportunity to reconnect communities and then have the church more influential with the law, because the good thing about church is about peace, and police should technically represent peace. So they should, the church should be able to come in and help and, tell people to, not really take sides apart as you can if you want, but voting and understanding that, hey, the way this system is set up, the way they tell us, if something goes wrong, we should be able to complain to people and file, our discrepancies with them. And this be a process to try to talk about how to correct this. And I think the churches can definitely help continue to moderate that for the community. It's a good way to kind of filter out people who are definitely probably very, very angry and frustrated and probably see no resolution. But as a good reminder, it's funny you brought up the story of Moses. It's a good one where, he ended up having to free his people, but he didn't live long enough to see everything that they did after the fact. But he at least got them to the promised land, so it's cool that taking the initiative to having conversations.
Yeah, I like that.
By mistake, it's never okay.
Yeah, you're talking about basically the church being a facilitator of the conversation. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what we're supposed to be about, being community, God's community, bring people together. That's a really good point.
And in so many ways, man. Because I mean, we're at a disadvantage now because Corona prevents events and limits us on gatherings, but so many different elements of arts within our culture and within the church. Between music and people that dance and people that are in the art. There's so many ways you can kind of tie that in and make it peaceful for people to release some frustration, have some conversations, and figure out what the holdup is with law enforcement.
Yeah. Well, our time is gone. I'm gonna slide this question in there real quick. There's so much more stuff I want to talk about: Liberty University, Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna slide this because I know we both like sports. Some of the sports, some of the NBA athletes have been talking about. They've been really frustrated about what's going on, especially with Blake being shot, and they've been talking about maybe we should stop playing. We should take some games off, boycott some games. Real briefly, in a minute. How do you feel about that? Is that going to be helpful? Should they do it? Should we not do it? What do you think? Should they keep their platform by continuously playing?
I understand what they want to do. I feel just as frustrated. I'm not on a national platform. I'm not as a celebrity like those guys or a billionaire. But even with them, and think about it, I don't have the millions, and I'm frustrated. They have the millions, and they're frustrated. If they cancel the NBA playoffs, it's a predominantly black sport. A white cop is still probably gonna try to shoot a black guy somewhere in this country. I get their aim, but with sports, and as we've seen from the Olympics back in the '60s, with the guys with the black gloves, and you got Muhammad Ali. This situation is beyond basketball. It's beyond sports.
Yeah.
And I think that if an athlete takes himself out of his athletic form, it's not an athlete anymore, So I think personally, I'm not, it might sound selfish. I want them to play, but they are a good situation where I think the NBA does kind of try to do some equality, and like what they're even doing with the jerseys, they allowed them to put names and, and be creative with that. But if you remove the players from the game, we already know we really know what the world is like with no sports. So it didn't change someone getting killed.
Right.
George Floyd got killed in May. Everything was shut down in May. So hopefully, but I understand the frustration, like, hey, we're back now. But I don't think that's going to stop racism, man. I think basketball helps prevent racism because it's one of the few sports where blacks and whites truly get along, where they're not from here. Most of the white guys in the NBA, half of them are from Europe. The other half from America. It's a very, very mixed sport. They would do themselves an injustice if they, cut basketball off. They kind of get it right for the most part. It's not perfect, but for sports wise, you don't have no Colin Kaepernick situations. You don't have no situations like with baseball where blacks feel like they can't play or be included. It's the one league where it's probably is predominantly black played, ran by white, but it's a mixed culture.
Good point.
Even in college basketball,
Yeah. Well, we're out of time. I appreciate you joining us again.
This was fun. Thank you, guys. Hopefully I didn't bore y'all to death.
Yeah, no, I really think that you gave us some good things to chew on, especially the point about some of the things that the church can do to bring people together. Thank you for joining us again. This is Impact 2020. Have a good night.
God bless you guys. Thank you.